She got into the wrong car, and the man sitting in the back seat didn't ask her to leave, he just locked the doors. Let that sit for a second, because the rest of this story depends on you understanding what kind of woman Mafia was before any of this happened. Not a hero, not someone with a secret skill set or a hidden past, just a woman who had learned, over years of quietly difficult living, how to stay still in a room that was trying to break her. That quality, that specific, unspectacular, iron-willed stillness, was the only thing standing between her and the worst night of her life. It was also the thing that saved it. Mafia had been on her feet for 11 hours straight. Double shift at the restaurant, a section of 8 tables she covered alone after her co-worker called in sick with a headache that Myra privately suspected was a hangover, and a kitchen that had run out of the daily special at 7 in the evening, but hadn't told the front of house until 8:30 when table 9 ordered 4 of them. By the time she finally untied her apron and pushed through the back door into the cold night air, her lower back had narrowed down to a single burning nerve, the skin on her feet had been punished past the point of feeling, and the only thought in her mind was the 40-minute ride home, the silence of her apartment, and 8 hours of unconsciousness. She pulled out her phone, requested an Uber, black car 2 minutes away. She stood at the curb with her arms crossed against the November cold, watching the little car icon crawl across her screen. The street was quiet this late. A few other restaurants still lit, a delivery driver weaving past on a scooter, the distant sound of a couple arguing 2 floors above the pharmacy across the road. Ordinary, familiar, hers. A black sedan appeared at the end of the block. It moved exactly the way Ubers move, slow, scanning, the specific careful crawl of someone looking for a specific face at a specific curb. It pulled up beside her with practiced patience. She got in without checking the plate. The door closed, the locks clicked, and Myra looked down at her phone and noticed for the first time in the blue light of the screen that the little car icon was still moving, still half a block north, still searching. She looked up. The man sitting in the back seat beside her was not looking at her. He was staring straight ahead at the partition behind the front seats, one hand resting flat against his own ribs, his expression completely still. He was dressed in a charcoal suit that had probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His profile was sharp and controlled, the kind of face that had never needed to ask for anything twice. Dark hair, late 30s. Everything about him precise and deliberate, right down to the way his fingers were spread on his side, pressing flat with careful, measured pressure. But the fingers were wet. In the low light of the car interior, she could see it, dark, spreading slowly through the fabric of his shirt beneath the jacket he'd folded across his lap. The 2 men in the front had not turned around, had not spoken. The one in the passenger seat was watching the street behind them in the wing mirror with an absolute stillness that was its own kind of warning. The driver's eyes found hers in the rearview mirror for exactly 2 seconds, measuring, not threatening, and then looked away. Myra's body had already made every calculation before her brain finished a single sentence. This was not an Uber. These were not drivers. The man beside her was bleeding from somewhere in his midsection and was doing everything in his power not to show it, and the 2 men in front were not going to stop this car because she asked them to. She should have screamed. She should have grabbed the door handle and pulled until her arms gave out. She should have done the automatic, animal thing that the human body is specifically designed to do when it finds itself in a sealed space with something dangerous. Instead, Mafia sat very still, squared her shoulders, looked straight ahead at the back of the headrest in front of her, and said in a completely level voice, "Where are we going?" The man turned his head. He looked at her the way you look at a stove that has just switched itself on, not with fear, not with anger, but with the precise and immediate attention of someone adjusting to a new variable. His eyes were very dark, very calm, the calm of a person who has been in enough dangerous rooms that they have stopped registering the danger separately from the air. "Somewhere quiet," he said. "I'd like to know the address." A pause, something moved in his expression, not a smile, not quite, but the faint outline of one, as if the request had briefly amused him against his better judgment. "You're not frightened," he said. "I didn't say that," Myra replied. "I asked for the address." He studied her. She held his gaze and did not look away, not because she was brave, she was terrified. Her heart was doing something structural to her ribcage. but because she had spent 10 years learning that the moment you look away in a room you don't control is the moment you become a problem instead of a person. She had learned it waiting tables. She had learned it in the specific, grinding way that women learn things they were never directly taught. 40 minutes, he said, turning back toward the partition. Then you go home. She nodded once and did not speak again. If you've ever felt that specific species of fear that doesn't live in screaming but in total physical stillness, the kind where your body understands that any wrong move will make everything worse, then you already know exactly what the next 20 minutes of that car ride felt like. The city moved past the windows in long bands of orange and white. The men in the front said nothing. The man beside her breathed in that too controlled way, every inhale measured, every exhale managed. Managing pain, she realized. He had been shot or stabbed or cut, and he was sitting in a car and managing it the way most people manage a difficult conversation. She watched him from the corner of her eye, and she thought, that was the thing about being underestimated your entire life. You got very good at thinking without anyone noticing you were doing it. And if you're new here and you're already this deep into the story, do yourself a favor right now, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and leave a comment below. Because what happens next in this car changes everything, and you're going to want to be here for every story we put out. The car pulled into a private underground garage and stopped in front of a door marked with nothing but a number. No signage, no visible cameras, which told Myra immediately that there were cameras she couldn't see. The garage smelled of concrete and motor oil, and something clean underneath, chemical and sterile. Inside was a clinic, not a hospital, nothing so official. A clean, precise space with white walls and stainless surfaces, and a man in scrubs already waiting, already prepped, already wearing the expression of someone who had been called in like this before and had long since made peace with it. Nobody introduced themselves to Myra. Nobody spoke to her at all. One of the men from the car walked her to a small waiting room off the main corridor, 2 chairs, a table overhead lighting that flickered once and settled, and gestured for her to sit. She sat. She listened to the sounds coming through the half-open door. Low voices in Korean, the specific clipped efficiency of people who have done this before, the faint sound of instruments on a metal tray. The man in the charcoal suit, silent throughout. She couldn't see him from where she was sitting, but she could hear the shape of his silence, controlled, deliberate, the silence of someone who had decided that the wound was not going to be the loudest thing in the room. The guard stood near the door. He was watching the hallway, not her. Outside, the night was doing whatever the night does, ordinary and indifferent, full of people going home from ordinary things. And on the edge of the table, 2 feet from Myra's left hand, sat a phone, face up, screen lit, a message thread open. She knew she shouldn't. She knew that in every version of this situation where she did the wrong thing started exactly like this, with a small, justifiable decision that turned a bad night into something irreversible. She knew it. She leaned forward slowly, the way someone shifts in a chair when they're tired, and she read the screen. The thread was in Korean, most of it. The numbers were not, and one entry in the thread, one name, one address, one outstanding figure in plain text, stopped her breathing. Her mother's name, her mother's address in Incheon, and a number, a debt figure that matched to the exact digit. The amount her mother had told her about 2 nights ago, the late-night phone call, the soft, careful crying, the "it's fine, don't worry, I borrowed a little money from some people and I'm handling it," the "it's nothing, Myra." The way her mother said "it's nothing" in the specific tone that always meant it was something. The man who was bleeding in the next room was the person her mother owed. Myra put the phone back exactly where it had been. She folded her hands in her lap. She stared at the opposite wall, which was blank and white and gave her nothing back. And in the space of about 20 seconds, she took apart everything she thought she knew about this night and rebuilt it. She had not stumbled into a stranger's car. Or rather, she had stumbled into it, but the connection went deeper than a random wrong door. Her mother had borrowed money from an organization. That organization's debt ledger had her family in it. And now she was sitting in a room belonging to the man who held that ledger, with information that might be the most valuable thing in this building. She was either the most endangered person in this situation or the most strategically positioned one, possibly both simultaneously. When the guard's attention shifted to something down the corridor, Myra stood up. She crossed the room in 4 steps. He turned and put a hand up, not rough but firm. "Tell him," Myra said, very quietly and very clearly, "that I have information about who put him in that chair tonight. Tell him I'll only say it to him, and tell him I'm not going to say it twice." The guard looked at her. She held his gaze without blinking. He was a big man with careful eyes, and she could see him recalculating this small, tired woman in restaurant clothes who had just delivered that sentence the way you deliver a check to a table where the food was wrong. Calm, certain, final. He spoke into his earpiece. 18 seconds later, he stepped aside. The man, she still didn't know his name, was sitting on the edge of an examination table with his jacket removed, a clean bandage taped to his left side, his shirt still unbuttoned at the collar. He looked like he had just come from a board meeting that had gone slightly sideways. He looked at her the way he had looked at her in the car, that calibrating, measuring attention, and said, "Sit." "I'll stand." She crossed her arms, not defiant, just certain. "My name is Myra, I'm a waitress. I got into your car by mistake tonight. I have no connection to your world and no interest in it. What I have is information. 2 nights ago I was running a private dining event on the 4th floor of the Siohan building. I overheard a conversation during service. At the time I didn't understand what I was hearing. Now I do." His expression hadn't changed, but the quality of his attention had shifted, the way a room shifts when someone turns on a light in an adjacent one. "The man who spoke," she continued, "used your name. He said the meeting on Thursday had already been moved. He said, and I'm giving you the exact words, that the problem would be solved before it reached the table. And then he said the name of this clinic." The room was quiet enough that she could hear the ventilation system. "He knew the address of this clinic," Myra said. "Someone told him." Junho, she didn't know his name yet, but she would, said nothing. His eyes moved just slightly, just for a fraction of a second, in a direction that was not toward her. She filed that away. "I'll tell you everything I heard," Myra said. "Every word, in exchange for one thing. My mother has a debt on your books, clear it. Every record, every amount, permanent. Do that and you'll have everything I know." He looked at her. The silence stretched long enough that a less steady person would have started adding things, qualifying, backtracking. Myra had waited out enough difficult customers to know that the first person to speak after a proposal loses the negotiation. "You don't know who you're speaking to," he said. "No," she agreed, "but you know I'm telling the truth, because if I was going to make something up, I would have made up something simpler." Another silence, shorter this time. "What is your mother's name?" he asked. She told him. He was quiet for a moment that felt like it had wait. Then he said, "My name is Junho." It wasn't yes. It wasn't an agreement. But he hadn't called his men in and he hadn't told her she was done talking, and in a room where she had no power at all, that small crack of continued possibility was everything. "Tell me what you heard," he said. "Exactly." "Clear the debt first." His jaw tightened, just slightly. "I don't make arrangements under." The lights went out. Not a flicker, not a warning. Complete, immediate, total darkness. What happened in the next 90 seconds became the kind of memory that bypasses language entirely and lives in the body as pure sensation. Shouting, 2 voices at once, then 3. The sound of something heavy against a wall. Movement in the dark, fast and purposeful. Myra pressed her back against the wall and crouched low, not trained instinct, just the body finding its smallest shape, and she made herself breathe. She heard something coming before she saw it, a rush of displaced air. A shape fast, low, rounding the corner of the examination table. She grabbed the metal instrument tray from the surface beside her and swung it at the space where the shape was going to be. The impact travelled up her arms and into her shoulders. The shape went down, a second of silence. Junho's hand found her arm in the dark, not a grab, a grip. Deliberate, directed. "Exit now with me." She moved with him. Through a door, a corridor, another door that opened to cold air and the glow of a single lamp above a service entrance. His car was there, different driver, no front passenger. He pushed her in first, got in after, and the car was already moving. Nobody spoke for a full 2 minutes. The city scrolled past the windows. Myra's arms were still vibrating from the impact of the tray and her heart was doing something loud and insistent against her sternum. But she kept her breathing controlled and her hands flat on her knees, and she did not let any of it reach her face. You didn't run, Junho said. He was looking at the city, not at her. Running into an unknown dark building, with unknown people between me and the exit, seemed like the worst option. Most people run anyway. Most people haven't thought it through. He turned and looked at her, that recalibrating look again, but different now, as if the category he had placed her in when she first spoke had just been quietly upgraded. You hit one of them, he said. I hit something, I don't know what. One of mine confirmed, it bought enough time. She nodded. Outside, the city was thinning, fewer lights, larger buildings, the quiet geography of money. The debt, she said, my mother's. I'll look into it. I didn't ask you to look into it. No, he agreed quietly, you didn't. They drove in silence the rest of the way. The building had no address visible from the street. The elevator required a physical key and a code. The floor it opened onto was a single large apartment, sparse in the way that speaks not of minimalism as aesthetic, but of a person who has stripped their surroundings down to what is necessary and nothing more. Every object was placed with precision. The angles were exact. The surfaces were clear. There were no photographs visible, nothing soft, nothing that admitted the possibility of permanence. Junho's second-in-command was waiting. He was introduced to no one. He was perhaps 50, compact and contained, with the specific stillness of a person who has spent decades making themselves hard to read. He shook Myra's hand when she offered it, a brief, correct handshake, and his eyes moved over her face with polite neutrality. She noticed his ring, right hand, silver, thick band, red stone. She put that away without visibly reacting to it, the way you put a plate down without rattling it even when your hands are tired. Junho and Woo spoke in Korean for several minutes while Myra sat and looked at the city through the floor-to-ceiling glass and let herself, quietly and privately, begin to shake. Not visibly, internally, the specific delayed trembling of a body that held itself together through an emergency and is now presenting the bill. She breathed through it. She counted the lights on the bridge she could see through the window. She gave herself exactly 2 minutes. Then she stopped. Woo moved to make calls in the other room. Junho sat, and in the apartment's first real silence, something in his performance loosened just slightly, just for a moment. Not vulnerability, exhaustion, the kind that lives beneath the kind that shows. She watched him without making it visible. His hands moved objects on the table beside him, a phone, a glass, and then moved them back to where they had been. He adjusted the angle of both items twice. He kept his back to the room's main entrance and had taken the seat facing the door. Every choice was a calculation about visibility and exposure. How long have you lived like this? She asked. He looked at her. Like what? Like someone is always about to take something from you. A pause that had texture to it. Long enough that it stopped feeling like anything, he said. She thought about her mother. The way her mother had cried so softly on the phone, trying to keep it quiet, as if the crying itself were the thing to be ashamed of rather than the situation that caused it. The specific loneliness of a person managing something too large for them and trying not to let it touch anyone they loved. She understood something about Junho in that moment. Not his world, not his choices, not the weight of what he had done and continued to do, but the underneath of it, the specific grief that comes from spending your whole life trying to protect something and then losing it anyway. She was about to speak when she heard it, a sound from the room where Woo had gone to make his calls. Brief, unintelligible, but the rhythm of it, the specific rhythm of a person saying something they had rehearsed, reading from a mental script, was familiar. She had heard that rhythm at the Seohan building, at the private dining table on the 4th floor, while she cleared appetizer plates and moved so quietly between the courses that she might as well have been part of the furniture. She looked at Junho. He was looking at the doorway. Leave a like right now if you already know what she's about to do, because this is the moment. This is what everything tonight has been building toward. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, found the glasses, poured water, came back unhurried, the way she moved between tables on a busy floor, smooth, efficient, designed not to be noticed. She set the glass in front of Junho, and as she straightened, she let herself lean slightly close to his right side, the way you lean when you're reaching over someone to place a dish, and she said 5 words against his ear, quietly enough that they barely had volume. "Don't look, it's him." She walked back to her chair and sat down and picked up her own glass. Junho picked up the water she had poured, drank, set it back down at an exact angle. His face had not changed, not 1 degree, not one line. That was the most frightening and the most impressive thing she had ever seen a person do. What followed was so careful it was almost elegant. Over the next 7 minutes, Junho redistributed the room without appearing to. He sent the driver on an errand. He mentioned a file in the study and asked Wu to retrieve it. Small, natural redirections. The choreography of a person who had been managing dangerous rooms for long enough that it had become instinct. Myra sat and looked at the city and did not listen because she did not need to. She knew what was happening. She had given him the information and stepped back, the way you place an order and let the kitchen do what it does. There was a brief sound from down the hall, a voice rising, Wu's, she was certain, then quiet, the specific quiet that is not silence but completion. Junho came back into the room alone. He walked to the window and stood beside her, not close but oriented toward the same view, the city below them, arranged and indifferent. "What exactly did you hear at the Siohan building?" he said. Not a question, a formality. He already believed her. He was building the record. She told him everything. The table by the window on the 4th floor, the 2 men, the careful, rehearsed voice, Wu's voice, and the specific sentences, the arrangements, the timing, the clinic's name used like an address on a delivery order, the silver ring turning on his finger as he talked. When she finished, Junho was quiet for a long time. "You knew at the clinic," he said. "I recognized the voice when he arrived here. Why didn't you tell me immediately?" She looked at him. "Because if I had told you in the clinic, it was just an exchange, information for my mother's debt. That was the deal I offered and you hadn't taken it yet." She paused. "But if I waited until you were in danger, real, immediate danger, and I told you then with his hands literally in the same room, that's different. That's not a transaction. That's a life." He was very still. "You calculated that," he said. "I calculated everything tonight," she said. "It's the only thing I had." The silence that followed was different from all the silences before it. Warmer. Not warm, that wasn't a word that applied to this man or this room or this night. But less cold. The difference between a space that has been deliberately emptied and one that has simply never been filled. He picked up his phone, dialed, said 4 sentences in Korean that she didn't fully follow, but she caught her mother's name, and she caught the word for debt, and she caught the finality in his tone. When he hung up, he said, "It's done." Myra breathed in, breathed out. "You can stay here tonight," Junho said. "It's not safe until we've accounted for Wu's partner. There may be others who know your face." "I have a shift tomorrow." "Cancel it." "I can't afford." "I'll cover it, for as long as necessary." She looked at his profile against the city light. This man, this controlled, dangerous, grief-carrying man who had spent his entire adult life making himself into something untouchable, and had ended up in a black car tonight with a waitress who had accidentally stepped into the one night that could have killed him. Who was the woman in the photograph, she asked. She hadn't planned to say it, but she had noticed it earlier, face down on the side table, moved when she sat down, now gone, and something about its absence was louder than any object in the room. He turned to look at her with an expression she had not seen on him before, unguarded, just for a moment. "My sister," he said. "She waited. She died 4 years ago. Someone decided her debt was more trouble than her life." He paused. His voice remained level throughout. That was somehow worse than if it had broken. "So I decided the same thing about them." Myra thought about her mother, about the fact that the version of this night where Junho hadn't survived, the version Wu had arranged, would have left her mother's debt on the books of whoever came next, would have left her mother exposed to something she had no way to understand or fight. "I'm sorry about your sister," she said. He looked at her with that expression again, not surprise, not gratitude, something older, something that had been waiting a long time to be addressed directly and had given up expecting it. "Go to sleep," he said. "Room at the end of the hall. I'll have you driven home when it's clear." She was at the doorway when he spoke again. "The tray in the clinic. You didn't think, you just moved." "There wasn't time to think." Most people freeze when there's no time to think. You keep saying that, Myra said. Most people like they've failed some test. In my world, Junho said quietly, they have. She looked at him one more time. The city behind him, the precise, empty apartment, the man who had arranged his life around the certainty that trust was a vulnerability he couldn't afford. In your world, she said, maybe you just haven't been spending time with the right people. She went to bed. She did not expect to sleep. She slept within 4 minutes, her body shutting down the way it shuts down after it has been held at maximum tension for hours, and finally, briefly, has permission to let go. She woke at 6 to grey light and the distant sound of city traffic. The apartment was quiet. Her shoes were where she'd left them. Her bag was on the table by the door. On top of the bag was a box, a phone, new, still sealed. Beside it, a single folded piece of paper with one handwritten line. Your mother's debt is cleared. The number in this phone is the only contact saved. Use it only if necessary. No names. She stood in the kitchen in her coat and held the note and felt the vertigo of a life that had reorganized itself overnight without asking her permission. She thought about her mother, who would wake up this morning to a freedom she didn't yet know she had. She thought about a woman she would never meet, whose photograph was kept face down by a man who couldn't bring himself to put it away. She thought about how the smallest decisions, a distraction, a car door, a phone left face up on a table, had threaded all of this together into something that, seen from the outside, would look like an accident. It wasn't an accident, it was just the way things connect when you're paying attention. She took both phones and went downstairs. The black car was already at the curb, of course it was. The city on the drive home was just waking up. Ordinary life assembling itself at the edges of the night, the early vendors, the delivery trucks, a woman walking a small dog past a flower stand with her coat buttoned wrong in the early morning rush. Myra watched it all through the window and felt very far from it and very close to it at the same time. Her building, her street. The driver did not speak. She said thank you anyway. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs that she had climbed thousands of times before and put her key in her door. Inside, the particular quiet of a space that belongs to only one person, her things, her furniture, the smell of the scented candle she'd lit 2 days ago, the kitchen table with its bills and her schedule pinned above it, her name in the manager's handwriting, tomorrow's shift, circled. She sat down in her coat and looked at the schedule, and looked at her regular phone and thought about calling her mother and thought about showering and thought about all the ordinary things that the night had briefly suspended and that were still here waiting, exactly where she'd left them. Her new phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. A photograph, her restaurant, exterior shot taken from across the street, recent timestamp, and below it a message, no greeting. Wu's partner knows your face. He knows your work schedule. He has been watching this address for 3 days, not you specifically, but this location, looking for leverage. Do not go in tomorrow. Do not go in at all until I contact you. She read it twice, looked at her schedule, her name, the circle. She thought about the 10 years she had spent in that restaurant, the rude customers and the skimmed tips and the kitchen that never told you when things ran out, and the manager who scheduled her doubles without asking. She thought about how she had survived all of it by being invisible, by being steady, by being the person who showed up and did the work and never made herself too large. She had spent a decade making herself small enough to be safe, and it turned out the danger was already there, it just hadn't introduced itself yet. She picked up the new phone, 1 contact, no name, just numbers. She called. It rang once. I expected you to sleep longer, Junho said. His voice in the morning was the same as his voice at 2 a.m., controlled, unhurried, as if time were a variable he had made peace with. The partner, Myra said, how immediate is the risk? Immediate enough. How many people know where I live? 2 that I've identified, possibly 3. She absorbed this. You could handle it. Yes, but you're telling me instead of just doing it. A pause, yes. Why? Because after last night, he said, I thought you might want to know. She looked out her kitchen window at the street below, the flower stand across the road, the ordinary morning, the life that had always been thinner than she'd understood. "Last night you said 40 minutes," she said, "and then you'd let me go home." "You are home. You know what I mean. The situation has changed." "Yes," Myra said. She straightened in her chair, put her feet flat on the floor. "It has, which is why," she paused, and she let the pause have its full weight, "I'm going to need a better deal." The silence on the other end was the longest of the entire night. Not tense, something else. The sound, she thought, of a person deciding whether to open a door they had kept shut for a very long time. "Come back," Junho said. Not a command, she had heard his commands. This was not one. She looked at her schedule one last time. Her name, the circle, the ordinary, punishing, underpaid life that had turned out to be sitting directly on top of something she'd never been shown. She stood up, picked up both phones, looked around her apartment at all of it with clear eyes, for what might be the last time she saw it as her only world. Then she walked out the door. Downstairs, the black car was still at the curb. The driver looked straight ahead. She got into the back seat. She did not rush. She settled, checked that both phones were in her bag, and looked out the window as the car began to move. She thought about Junho's sister, a woman who had been owed something and instead been erased, a death that had set in motion 4 years of consequences, a man who had made himself into something untouchable, a second-in-command who had spent years learning to wear loyalty like a suit, a debt ledger with her mother's name in it, a waitress standing at a curb at 1 a.m, too tired to check the license plate. She thought about the way things connect, how the smallest point of contact, a borrowed sum, a phone call, a car door, can thread 2 lives together across years and geography, and the enormous distance between one world and another. She thought about what she had done last night with nothing but a metal tray, 5 words, and the patience to wait for the right moment. And she thought, in 10 years of waiting tables, she had learned how to read every room she walked into. She had learned how to move through spaces that didn't belong to her and come out the other side with what she needed. She had learned that the people who underestimate you are the people who hand you your advantage without knowing they're doing it. Last night, for the first time in her life, she had walked into a room that had nothing to do with her and made it hers. She was walking back into it with open eyes, with terms, with the full knowledge of what she was worth to the man who was waiting for her by a window in an apartment above the city. The car pulled up to the building. The driver came around and opened her door. She stepped out and walked through the entrance and rode the coded elevator to the top floor, and the door opened, and he was there by the window where she had left him, turned toward the sound of her arrival. His face did not perform a welcome. It did not need to. She walked past him to the kitchen, found the coffee machine, started it, found 2 cups. "Sit down," she said without looking at him. "You've been standing all night. Sit down and tell me exactly who the partner is and what you're going to do, and then we'll talk terms." A pause. "You're giving me instructions," Junho said. "Someone in this room has to." She turned and handed him a cup. The city was bright behind him, morning light remaking everything. "You trust no one, which means you've had no one to think with. Last night you had someone. Look how that ended for you." He looked at the cup, he looked at her. And then, for the first time properly, without qualification, he almost smiled. He sat down. Myra sat across from him. The coffee was hot. The city was loud below them. Somewhere across town, her mother was waking up to a morning she didn't yet understand, lighter, freer, the weight of 2 years quietly lifted in the night. Somewhere, a man with a silver ring was gone. And somewhere, in the middle of a life she had not chosen, but had navigated with every tool she possessed, Myra Seo had stopped being the person who survived the room and started being the person who ran it. She had checked the license plate this time. She knew exactly which car she was in. And for the first time in 10 years of surviving other people's rooms, she felt something she didn't immediately have a name for. It took her a moment, sitting in the back of that car with the morning light cutting in from the east, to recognize it. It was the feeling of being exactly where she was supposed to be. Not safe, not certain, but right. The specific rightness of a person who has finally stopped moving sideways through a life that was too small and started moving forward through one that fits. Whatever came next, the partner, the danger still loose in the city, the strange and unclassifiable thing that was forming between her and a man who kept photographs face down and adjusted objects to exact angles, and had said come back in the voice of someone asking for the first time in years. Whatever came next, she would handle it the same way she had handled last night, with patience, with attention, with the willingness to sit still in a difficult room until the right moment arrived. She was very good at that. She had been practicing her whole life,